Sorry for the delay. So I wanted to spend the time just on some trends that are happening in kind of web search around community and social media content. So here we go. This is something about what's happening in content creation online. So if you kind of look at in a sense, sort of professional published content, which is basically either books that are being published and that actually show up someplace bound, or magazines or newspapers, all of that content comes out to something on the order of 3 to 4 gigabytes a day. And all of these numbers are going to be, if you were to take the information and turn it into ASCII. So that's ASCII content. Professional web content, by this I'm thinking of things like the IBM.com website that's created by some webmaster at the behest of some corporate entity that has some sort of more or less uniform control, and that's about a couple of gigabytes a day or so. Social media content, interestingly, now has surpassed both of those together, and it's a little hard to estimate these things, and these are still kind of early numbers, but I'm estimating it to be about 5 to 10 gigabytes a day of social media content that's being produced sort of across the web, and it's a combination of all sorts of different mechanisms people have for creating this stuff. So to put that in context, you can jump a couple of orders of magnitude from that by looking at the total amount of text that's being produced. It's mostly email and instant messages, and if you look there, it looks more like a couple of terabytes a day. And then there's a natural upper bound. The upper bound comes from assuming that everybody just kind of wakes up and every man, woman, and child on the planet types like a monkey for 4 or 6 hours a day at 100 words a minute, and you get another couple of orders of magnitude. So I think that's a pretty safe upper bound. We're not expecting too much growth in people's typing speed, at least in terms of just sort of raw typed text creation. Okay, so that last upper bound, which is 4 orders of magnitude greater than what we're seeing in social media content today, that looks like about 52 petabytes a year. That you could imagine being created unless there are significant changes in something like the global population and the way that we produce text, which right now hovers around $25 million per year on just raw storage cost. So $25 million a year to keep up with the absolute upper bound of aggregate textual creation that the planet is currently capable of. So if you extrapolate storage trends out for maybe 5 more years, this is about the cost of having 10 people on your payroll. So any company that looks like, you know, a few hundred people, where an additional 10 people worth of cost is something that you'd think of as being more or less manageable, any company of that size potentially could choose to store the textual output of everybody forever. And we'll just go back throughout all of previous history, and we'll add that because it's not very big. So what does that mean? Well, it kind of means that, number one, there are a lot of people who could potentially do this. Number two, in the recent past, we've had scale-based differentiation on what people do in search and with indexing. And that's just going to go away. So, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, for sure, nobody's going to really be getting up in an audience like this and saying, I have a cool new way to compress postings. That's not going to be interesting, because the cool new way to compress postings, it already fits on my cell phone by that point, and it's not interesting to move beyond that. Okay, so that's, I think, you know, we're gonna think about different things, and it's already there, and we're already ready to jump into that. The metadata story is a little bit different. Anchor text is sitting around 100 megabytes a day of anchor text being generated. New content. I'm not talking about duplicates or mirrors. Tags now are starting to look like something in the same range. Reviews are a little bit smaller. Ratings are quite small. If you actually look at attentional information, like what people are clicking on, what people are looking at, it's huge. So where we are now in search is that really, as if you had to give the most coarse characterization possible of where we do well in search, we do well in search when there's a lot of anchor text. We do badly in search when there's not a lot of anchor text. So from 1996 to the present, I think not too many people would argue too vociferously against this. Processing of that anchor text has driven many of the advances that we've seen. There's a lot more to it, of course, and I'm hyper-generalizing. But now there's a lot more that's more rich, more available, and we've got very early indications that these signals can be very valuable, but we haven't really made full use of them yet. So I'll leave it at that in terms of what's happening in the social space. These are all social signals that potentially are valuable in search. And I'll maybe just close with one quick thought. This is a health measure, and I'm not going to define it unless you catch me afterwards and ask me what it is. This is a health measure of Flickr, which is a social media photo sharing website, compared to another social network. And according to the health measure, Flickr is a very strong, organically growing network. And I want to show you sort of what that means in practical terms. So this is some images out of Flickr. And these images, Flickr tends to encourage very high-quality content creation. So if you look at sort of the average image, it tends to be pretty good. But still, it's probably like me off on Thanksgiving, and there's a bunch of people in my backyard, and nobody cares. But these, you could stop on pretty much any one of these images. And I think you could spend a little time and really study it. And it's pretty remarkable how high quality these are. So the point is that these are the most interesting images on Flickr according to a fully automated measure. So if you look at where we are today in doing image processing and understanding that this picture is really cool and interesting, we're not to the point where we can identify pictures like this. But if you look at where we are in terms of pretty sophisticated processing of behavioral information, this exists. And so what I would argue is that the level of quality in these social media resources is actually to the point where it's very high, and it's just not been fully exploited yet. Right. Thanks.